I have to start off by saying thank you, obviously, to everybody for coming tonight, because it is a special night for a lot of different reasons. One of the things on why the book is called Gifted is because of the family and friends that I have, and you guys are all here tonight, so I truly thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming, especially with this weather. And for those of you that know the luck that I have, if I had this party in July, it would have snowed 9 feet, and nobody would have been able to come at all. I would have been sitting here with Megan and the kids, and they suck. I love the kids, sometimes. Exactly, when they're quiet. I've written a speech probably 100 times in my head, and each time it comes out differently. So I know I'm definitely going to struggle to get through it tonight. So if you could just bear with me. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the most important speeches I've ever given, because there's a lot of sincerity that I want to come through, that everybody can feel themselves, and as if I'm reaching out to you personally, because in a lot of ways I am. And I know a lot of people haven't read the book at this point, and that's okay, because I'm about to ruin the ending for you, but I lived long enough and I got the transplant. Pretty cool. But I certainly would be remiss if I didn't talk about sort of how the book came about, because I think it's important to understand, or at least to know at the very least, that never once when going through this process did I thought I'm going to write a book about it. And shortly after the transplant, I started volunteering with organ donation organizations, and they had put me in front of audiences to do public speaking events. And many times after the public speaking events, I would have people that come up to me and say, "You got to write a book, you got to write a book." And I would say, okay, but why are we saying everything twice? So the first time that it happened, you blow it off. The second time, maybe it's a fleeting thought in your head. The third time, maybe it's anchored a little bit. And by the fourth time, I thought maybe I should write a book, because maybe this experience was important enough to share with folks, and that there's others out there who can gain something from it. So in January of 2007, I bellied up to a laptop one late night and started writing. And within about 6 months, I was about 300 pages into it, thought the book was an atrocity, and deleted it. I know, I hear some gasps. Trust me, you wouldn't have read it. What happens is there's so many things that go on in our lives that you try to condense down into something that people might actually want to read someday. And it wasn't there. So hitting the delete button was the best thing I ever did for a lot of reasons, because it allowed me to start over, but it gave me a foundation for writing a book that I thought people would actually want to read. And eventually it came into the formation of a book that people would want to read. And then I came across Caroline Pastor, one of my best friend's fiancés, who happens to be an editor and would edit it on the cheap, who did an absolutely amazing job in making it what it is today. And I think that it's a really good story. I read it for the first time cover to cover not that long ago, as if I didn't write it, and there were times where I struggled to get through it. Particularly some of the early days of being sick, the days about my dad, the days having to be away from Sue, all very, very, very difficult times. But as you can see in the end, that you somehow get through all these things, and here we are 5 years later, and Gifted is a reality. So I'm very proud of that. Thank you very much for that. As you do read the book, or let me just say this, there's usually 3 pieces of information that I get from people who have read the book. Megan talked about one of them. I had no idea what you were going through. That's a common theme that I'm definitely going to talk about. One of the other things that Megan touched on a little bit as well is you seem to be so positive and you stay healthy. What's the secret? How do you do it? We'll talk about that. There's a lot of white beans involved, and unfortunately. And then people say it's an amazing story, and it is for a lot of reasons, and I'll definitely get through it. But the first thing is people always say, I had no idea what you were going through. There's a reason for that. There's a very good reason for that. At least in my eyes, in the beginning, there was a good reason for that. And the reason was that when you're talking with people about what's going on with you, particularly the problems I was having with colitis and things like that, you feel extremely vulnerable, and it brings you down. And it basically will take away every ounce of dignity that you have. And it got hard to even just look at yourself in the mirror. And it's a hard thing to come to grips with yourself, let alone reach out to others and share that with them so that they can get some perspective of what you're doing. So in roundabout ways, I went to my father many times, and only my father, because I needed somebody. And Sue and I weren't together at the time. She was overseas. But I needed somebody who I can basically give all that burden to, who is willing to take it themselves and keep it to themselves. Because for folks out there who have kids and whatnot, when you look into your kid's eyes and you see fear and you see anxiety, your first reaction is, I'll do anything I can to take it away. When you have colitis and you have liver issues, there's not a whole lot as a parent that you can do. Knowing that, my mother, unfortunately, was kept in the dark about, I don't know, would you say everything? Yeah. Yeah, just about, as well as many of my friends, many of my family. These are the things that you guys give me feedback on that say, well, why didn't you tell us? We could have been there for you. And you're right, you could have been. And you would have been. And I get that. I totally understand that. But you can't blame yourselves for that, because I consciously made that decision. Because not only was I trying to, I guess, protect you guys from what was going on with me, as I didn't really know, I was also trying to protect me. Because it's hard. Look around, folks. When you go out and you tell one person what the story is, you end up having to tell 100 people. And to tell that story over and over is a difficult story to tell. So it was a conscious effort on my part to keep it to myself. Or to keep it just between Daddy and I. So please, as you read the book, don't be overly hard on yourselves. Don't say, I could have been a better friend, I could have been a better... You guys were perfect. You guys were exactly the way I needed you to be, and I wouldn't change anything in the world. So just stay perfect, and we'll all be okay. So thank you for that. The one thing, though, that I sort of took away from that experience of being in those positions where you feel that down, it's given me a greater appreciation for life. Every day I savor. Every sunrise, every snowfall, every raindrop that falls. I'm incredibly grateful to be here. There was one point where I was in the hospital and Oni said to me, when I was running, I think, 104 fever, and you know, Liz, I was getting OKT3. And Oni says, I'm jealous of you. And I said, really? Because we can switch places right now. And he goes, no, I'm being serious. And I said, why? He says, because you have a perspective on life I may never get. And at that point in time, I agreed with him. Right. Oni was right that time. That one singular time. Never before, never since, never again. But he was right about that. And when we think about these experiences that we have and we say, oh, I could have... Folks, I wouldn't change it. From my perspective, I do have an appreciation for life. I have appreciation for everybody in this room. I have appreciation for every moment that my feet hit the floor and every challenge that I face every day. They're not easy. They're some of the hardest things I'll ever have to do. But I'm so appreciative for the experiences, because at the end it's made me a stronger person. So don't ever feel that you guys let me down. You guys were champions for me, and you always will be. And I appreciate that.